Hi there, everybody, and welcome to the frozen tundra of the city of Houston and the frozen tundra of the Fox 26 studios with Highway 59 behind me and temperatures near freezing. I'm going to break this out today. I haven't broken this out on the air yet, but you know what? Now is as good a time as ever for the Buc-ee's beanie. We took a recent trip as a family to Oklahoma during the last cold snap, one of our recent cold snaps, and stopped at the Buc-ee's in Madisonville. It was so cold that I saw this and I'm like, how much is it? 15 bucks? Sold. So we have been through quite, and you're going to see the camera kind of moving around here because it's windy. We have been through an amazing weather roller coaster here in H-Town and all across Southeast Texas over the last 24 hours. Get this, high temperature at Hobby Airport on Sunday was 80. We woke up this morning to a temperature of 31. So give or take a 50-degree drop in temperatures. My tripod is going to fall over here. So I'm probably going to head back inside here very shortly because I don't want everything to get broken. But the bottom line is we've had a 50-degree drop in temperatures. And so the focus of the forecast here that I want to talk about is what are some of the threats for the rest of the week? You know, what do we have to worry about tonight? What about later on this week? The question everybody's asking, is there any chance for snow? Is there any chance for ice? And then some other pretty big problems happening across the rest of the country. So lots to talk about here on Mondays with Mike. And thanks for joining me here. If you are watching me live, just to let you know, we do air this on Fox Local every Monday at 1 p.m. And then we also have updates for you Monday through Friday, every day at 11 a.m. on our weather show, which we call Forecasting with Friends. Sometimes we have friends, sometimes we don't, but we don't really change the name of the show. So let's do this. I'm going to head back inside, warm up a little bit, get a more stable tripod, and we'll talk about some of the hazards that are actually coming our way for this week. So this is awkward. This is not funny. I left my badge inside. Can't get back in the building. I need help. I'm stuck. It is so cold out here and I'm stuck. I need to find somebody. Hey, Jose, I need you to let me back in the building.
Oh, right here.
This is our IT manager. Yeah, because I walked outside without my badge and now I have hypothermia. Darn it. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right. Let's go back to the weather center. I got Jose Rivas just got me. That was terrible. Well, I was recording I was recording my little thing for Mondays with Mike, like a little stand-up out there. Yeah. And then I came back inside, forgot my microphone, and then I must have just put my badge down. Oh, no. I was stuck, and then I don't even know how to describe what door that is.
I started running that way.
Well, I know that's what and then I felt bad.
No, I bet he's this way.
You like my Buc-ee's beanie?
You're like a Buc-ee's beanie.
It's a Buc-ee's beanie.
You're like Jack Torrance in The Shining out there.
Seriously, I'm like Jack Torrance in The Shining. Oh my gosh. Thank you, ladies. What a predicament. I didn't know what else to do because I couldn't even describe where I was. All right. I'm safe. I will try to get myself back together and come back with some weather information. All right, so now that I'm nice and warmed up, everything's all chilled out here in the weather center, let's talk about what's chilled out across the country. So it isn't just our area that's getting this cold air. Not at all. We got a big winter storm sweeping all across the country. The biggest one actually so far of the year. The only thing that rivals it really was what began back in November and much of December, which is where they had these big lake effect snow events where there was just a lot of snow blowing off the Great Lakes for like Buffalo and upstate New York and Western New York and parts of Pennsylvania, Michigan. Those are places that had snow so far up until the last couple of days. Over the weekend, Kansas City was buried in snow. In fact, there were some fatalities across parts of the Midwest as well. And for the day today, the focus is on the East Coast, on the Mid-Atlantic, and then also places like this. Kentucky's had a lot of snow. Parts of Indiana and Ohio seeing a lot of snow. But really, it's the Mid-Atlantic part of the United States and the Northeast that are going to be really getting the brunt of it through the day today. Now, obviously, yes, it's all a part of the same system that's bringing us our cold air. In fact, it's interesting. It's not even really that much colder up there than it is here, because we got down to about 30 this morning. We'll do it again tonight, getting down to the upper 20s in most locations. And it's not going to be that much colder up there. It's just that they have moisture and they have lift and all that stuff there. And we have a clear sky and high pressure here locally. So everything is looking pretty messy over there. So for the day today here on this Monday, we're looking at Maryland, Virginia, Delaware is getting buried in snow. I don't talk about Delaware very often in my weather reports. In fact, that's probably like the first time ever. But anyway, they're getting a lot of snow. Also heavy snow across much of New Jersey. And then some of it's moving into New York as well. So it is pretty rough. This is what the United States Capitol looks like today. It has been covered in snow, and there's been more heavy snow that's been rolling in. So this is going to be one of the big weather stories of the day. And of course, it's a very busy day over there in Washington, D.C., as they're certifying the election and all that kind of stuff. So all the lawmakers have to find their way there to Capitol Hill, and they're going to be making their way through some of the really heavy freezing fog and blowing snow and that kind of thing. Our temperatures for the rest of the day are going to be hanging around the 30s and 40s. The wind chill values are ridiculous. So this actually was from just earlier this morning, but I wanted to just show you because it's going to be similar again heading into Tuesday morning with those feels like values down into the teens and 20s. And we'll probably have another advisory issued, which is called a cold weather advisory. It used to be called a wind chill advisory, and the Weather Service changed the name, I think, thinking that it would maybe be more clear, but and maybe it is. You tell me, right? Nobody asked me. So here's a look at tomorrow morning. What are we looking at for Tuesday morning? Here's what I need you to prepare for is that, and you guys know the drill. We usually stay a little warmer in the city, and you're going to stay a little warmer in a populated suburb versus out in the country, just because of what we call that urban heat island effect. Everything makes heat. The cars, the buildings, all the machinery, everything that's going on, right, creates heat. And then when you're out over the isolated areas, or excuse me, if you got a property out in the rural areas somewhere, it's going to get colder. So I think we know that. This is a look at what we're anticipating waking up to for you tomorrow morning in Brenham, about 25 degrees. So you probably already have your pipes wrapped and all that kind of stuff, but if you haven't, you should. Same thing here for Conroe at about 26 degrees by tomorrow morning. That's enough to pop the valve off of your sprinkler systems, and that's a $200 down the drain that you wish you didn't have to do. So we'll talk about that as far as preparations coming up. Kingwood down to about 28 tonight, and then we'll get close to 30 for a low temperature both in the Clear Lake, NASA area and around Pearland, among other spots. That's just kind of a sampling of what to expect. Here's another view of some more locations of approximately what we're looking at for lows by tomorrow morning. Columbus 25, Bay City down to about 27, Angleton 27. Galveston probably down to the middle 30s. And so just across the water, the inland locations of Galveston County will probably have a light freeze. I don't think it's going to be frosty though, because the air is very dry. And so it's probably going to be too dry to generate frost, but it's not impossible that there could be some out there. Let me show you this Futurecast. So what I have here is I've queried the temperature. This is according to the GFS computer model, which is not going to be 100% accurate, but it gives us a good idea. So this is what we're seeing for this afternoon, highs in the 40s. Then they fall into the 20s and 30s tonight, rebound back to the 40s tomorrow. Some models are showing 50 degrees. That's possible. And then as we start the day out on Wednesday, we fall back down to the 30s. There's a very slight chance of like a flurry or a little sleet pellet or two on Wednesday morning. but most of the action is going to hold off until Thursday. And here's where things get really crazy across the state of Texas, not just here, but we're going to have a blanket of snow that starts to form up here from Abilene and Wichita Falls back over to around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And sometimes that can form some heavy bands also. And I'll show you again here in a minute what kind of causes that, but they might end up with 7 to 10 inches of snow up there in that part of North Texas. Then it's going to mostly be really cold rain here. But when you look at the temperature here, remember, freezing is 32, obviously. That's the temperature at the surface. It does change a little bit when you go up into the atmosphere, a couple thousand feet above the ground. And that can mean all the difference between having very, very cold rain and having some sleet mixed in. So we're going to be very, very close to this rain-snow line. Most likely, I think it's going to be snow in North Texas. And like I said, some of it heavy. And it is primarily going to be rain here with some exceptions. Like there could be some little frozen sleet pellets mixed in. It's not impossible that we could get those, like some grapple, which is like the fluffy, not quite a snowflake. And then the other thing that we need to be concerned about is after the rain stops, heading into Thursday night and early Friday, that's when there could be some ice forming. If there's any water left over on the ground and we do freeze, then that's where it could form some patches of ice. So this right here is not perfect. Okay, this is what I would call an idealized view. Back in college, they used to call this a conceptual model. So by that, it means this gives you the rough idea of what causes different precipitation types, but the atmosphere is never perfect like this, but this is just an overall view. So if you're freezing like they are up north, you're freezing on the ground, and then you go up 2,000 feet and you're freezing, and you go up 10,000 feet and you're freezing, and the whole time you're freezing, you're going to get snow. If you have layers in between where maybe it starts out as snow, falls through a warm layer where it melts, and then falls back into a cold layer near the ground, well, then that freezes and it makes little ice pellets, which we call sleet. There's another scenario here. This is the worst. This is the absolute worst. That's where you have snow and it falls through the warm air here and melts into liquid water. And then we have a very thin layer of freezing air at the surface, so thin that the raindrop doesn't have time to freeze as it's falling. What happens is it freezes on contact with cars, power lines, tree limbs, and things like that. That's the worst. That's freezing rain. We've had that before. It's sometimes referred to as an ice storm. It's the worst because you can't go anywhere. It's dangerous. It knocks the power out sometimes. Sometimes it could actually, branches will fall out of trees and things like that. And it becomes a hazard. And then you have a normal day, which is it's cold up where the clouds are, but it's warmer beneath it, and you have rain. So we're probably going to end up in this category. Areas north of Houston may end up with some brief freezing rain on Thursday and into early Friday. So that's a concern. Sleet is not bad. Sleet is more of like a, hey, what's that? And kind of you hear a little tapping on the window. You're like, oh, that's interesting. And it turns out it's just little frozen droplets. So sleet is cool. Sleet is fine. Snow is really cool. Freezing rain is bad, and rain is, well, we know what rain is. We get that a lot. So snow is the exciting one, but sleet's okay. Lows tonight across the state will be quite cold. So it's actually, like I said, we're not that much colder than they're going to be in the Northeast. We're going to get down to the upper 30s, low 40s here. Dallas about 24, Oklahoma City 14, not counting the wind chill. And even over to places like Shreveport, 25, likely freezing weather in New Orleans at 32, and then about 25 in the Memphis area. So let's take a look at this. So our Futurecast here, this is the European computer model. I'm going to just grab another clicker here. This is another view of what might be happening here via a different computer model, and we're looking ahead here at Wednesday. So I have this paused here, Wednesday at 11 p.m., when we start to see a mess forming out to the west, maybe a sprinkle here, but about 40 degrees. Now look what happens. Here's where, I'm telling you, Thursday is going to be gross because we have probably heavy rain. Like we might get a couple of inches of rain and probably some thunderstorms too. At the same time, as you go farther to the north and the temperatures get colder, if we're closer to 40 and Dallas is closer to 30, then obviously it's going to be snow and or ice for them and probably just rain for us. But what gets complicated is right now the models are depicting here, this is the European model showing 39. What if it's 35 in Houston? And then it gets closer to about 30 or 32 for, those of you just north of Conroe or something. That's where it gets a little dicey. So that's going to be Thursday night heading into Friday that things, become a little bit more of a concern. And like I said, it's mostly going to be just plain snow for areas farther off toward the north. And it's possible here that North Texas and into southern parts of Oklahoma, they could have like 7 to 10 inches of snow coming up. As far as our forecast, guys, for the rest of the day today, blustery. Tomorrow morning, we talked about that. 28 degrees. It'll take some cold weather preparations that we'll speak about here in a moment. 49 degrees on Tuesday, so getting close to 50 there. Start to get a few light rain showers there on Wednesday. D-Day is coming up there on Thursday with the heavy rain and the cold temperatures, and then we'll have to keep an eye here on Friday morning for the potential for some ice. All right, let's talk about what preparations you might want to make. All right, guys, so let's talk about maybe some of the preparations that you might want to make, of course, depending on what time you're watching this, okay? The earlier you could do the preps, the better, because if you wait too late today, then obviously it gets colder and, the sun goes down, starts getting dark after 5:30. So if you are a homeowner or if you live in a home that has a sprinkler system, that is one of the weakest parts of your plumbing system. In other words, most vulnerable, I should say, not weakest. It's the most vulnerable to freezes. And it is a bonanza for landscape folks and plumbers and everything else after a freeze, because what happens is there is a thing that looks like a bell that's on the top of your sprinkler system where there's going to be a pipe that comes up, and then there are a couple of valves, and the valve controls the water that flows into your sprinkler system. But there's, I know what I'm talking about, right? This is just from experience. There's a valve there called a backflow preventer, and it just prevents like the dirty water that's in your yard from like backing up into the water system. You know what I mean? Like we want it to only go one way. So, but anyway, there's like a transition part where it goes from the water source into the actual sprinklers. And in between, there's this thing that looks like a bell on top. Anyway, that will freeze. Let's say you did no preparations at all. It'll freeze. When water freezes, the ice expands a little bit, and so it can break that metal or brass piece, and it will also pop this valve off of the top. What follows very quickly after is a gusher of water going everywhere. So not only is it wasting water, but it's going to be pouring out into the street, which is a hazard for multiple reasons. I mean, it could freeze over and freeze the street. You're going to have a gigantic water bill. So it's hazardous, it's expensive, and you'll have to have somebody come and shut off the water either at the street or in the side of your house if you know where the water cutoff is. Then you're going to have to either have no sprinklers or you're going to have to pay somebody to come in and either block it off or put a new one of those valves on, one of those new backflow preventers, and it's going to cost you a couple $100. So let's not have to lose a couple of $100. I'm not trying to take business away from the plumbers, but it is one of those things where when we do have a freeze, depending on how cold it gets, after a major freeze, I talked to a plumber who was at our house for something different. This was after the 2021 freeze. And he said, forget about even calling a plumber. If we do have a major freeze, and it is going to be close, it's probably going to get down to, like I said, mid-20s. Not as bad as last year even. Last January, we got down to the teens. So not as bad as that, and not nearly as bad as the big freeze of 2021. But when we do have those extreme freezes, the plumbers are it's like I said, it's a bonanza for them. They're not going to even probably be able to answer the phone because they're so busy. So this guy said he just went into the neighborhood and drove up and down the street and just waited for the person to get his attention, and he would go fix them, usually the sprinkler system. And they stock up on these things before cold weather season because they have to help people, because otherwise you just, like I said, you have a gusher. So how do you prevent that? Look, if you go to YouTube, because who am I? If you go to YouTube and just type in how to shut off, prepare sprinklers for freeze or something like that, I actually do have a video in there that I made several years ago. I think it's pretty good, pretty comprehensive, but I don't, like I said, I'm not Bob Vila. But, just Google it or YouTube it. We're going to effort actually here at Fox 26 to have content made today on our Fox Local platform for how to do that to your sprinklers. But if we don't, or you have a hard time finding it, I don't want you to lose to, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So there's that. The other thing is just your general pipes. When we have really, really cold conditions, like down in the teens, some people have pipes in their attic that can burst. That is a nightmare. I've seen that. We had somebody in our neighborhood that's got a really tall house, a 2-story house, but it's like really tall on the third, like has like an attic, on the top. And the water just gushed down through the whole house. And it was just such an incredible mess. So there are things you could do in those cases too. Again, I'm not an expert. I know you can open the door to the attic and let some of the warm air up there. Don't take my word for it. Again, do your own research on that, but don't neglect it. If you live really far to the north or outside of Houston, think about it. If you live let's say you live in Katy, Sugar Land, Humble, Friendswood, Clear Lake, any of these spots, you're not going to have a huge, disastrous, major freeze. I would be more concerned about your plants because they are going to get damaged in weather like this. We're going to be below freezing for probably 8 hours, some spots even longer than that. So that will kill some of your sensitive plants. So if they're in a pot, bring them inside. If they are outside and you can't move them, then cover them today. And there are little tricks for how you can keep them warm. The best trick I heard actually is to use Christmas lights, but you can't use LED Christmas lights because they don't create any heat. You got to use old-fashioned style Christmas lights. That'll keep them warm. If you can't use the Christmas lights, that's fine. Just covering them with a blanket or sheet or whatever will help to keep them from getting frozen or burned. And then tomorrow it's going to warm right back up. We might hit 50 for tomorrow, which I know is not warm, but obviously it'll thaw everything out. So plants, pets, okay? Most people have indoor dogs. Some people have like indoor, outdoor dogs. Yes, there are some people who have strictly outdoor dogs. And, any reasonable person has to understand that. And there are outdoor dogs that have a dog house and a warm place to be. And if they're a cold weather breed, they're probably going to be perfectly fine. But just be mindful of that. Which, by the way, like the SPCA and the police will get phone calls of people leaving their dogs out. So just try to keep that in mind. Just be smart about it. So that's 3 of the P's. The 4th P is people. So God forbid if the electricity goes out, which it probably won't, but if it does, then you really have to check on people like elderly or, check on kids, but especially like people who are disabled or have special needs or who are elderly, who are not going to be able to cope with the loss of electricity very well. We need to check on them because we lost a lot of people in the 2021 freeze because like nobody went and checked on them. So that's the 4 Ps. So, just take care of yourself. Try to make those preparations as early as you can today. And we will, of course, have the latest here on Fox Local and also on our newscasts at noon, at 5, at 6, at 9, at 10, and the whole thing. So thanks for joining me here for Mondays with Mike. A shout out to my mom and to Neil back in Florida. I know it's going to be a little bit cold for you guys, but high temperature of 70 sounds pretty good from over here. The frozen tundra of Texas. Everybody, please have a safe night. And again, we're going to keep a close eye out for some frozen precipitation coming up for late this week, and we'll have details for you as the week wears on. Have a good one.